She's one of the best investigators I had.
But?
She's different.
In what way?
In every way.
I need your help. You come stay on the island. A way of avoiding all those people that you might want to avoid right now. You will be investigating thieves, misers, bullies, the most detestable collection of people that you will ever meet. My family.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to DNA Film Wars, episode 10.
Howdy, howdy.
This is our bonus review of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, directed by David Fincher, starring Daniel Craig, Rooney Mara, Christopher Plummer, and Stellan Skarsgard, based on the novel by Stieg Larsson, and it is about a journalist who goes on the hunt for this woman who has been missing for 40 years, presumed dead.
Presumed dead, yeah.
And he is assisted by this young computer hacker named Lisbeth Salander, who is the titular character, and stuff happens.
That is true, some stuff does happen.
Well, so if Dylan doesn't mind, I think I'll go ahead and start off with my initial thoughts since I've never watched this movie before.
Go for it, man.
Alright, so initially I'm going to say I enjoyed this movie. Okay, maybe enjoy is not the right word for this kind of movie. I thought this movie was well made.
I've been there before.
And I found it intriguing. It's a really fun watch. It's long. We'll talk about that later. It's long. But I never found myself bored. And I'll just go ahead and say now, I mean, it's a good movie.
That's true. I agree with you. I mean, it does run a little long at times, but we'll talk about that later. For the most part, during that long run time, like you said, I wasn't really bored. This is the second time I've watched this, and like you said, I don't know if enjoyed is the right word for it, considering the content of this movie, but I enjoyed it again, I guess. It's a good movie. I'm a big fan of David Fincher, actually. I mean, I've seen quite a few of his movies.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and talk. I have not watched a lot of David Fincher films. In fact, the only two I believe I've seen before I watched this movie was Alien 3.
His directorial debut.
Which I think is more of a studio film than a David Fincher film. And then 7, which I really enjoyed 7.
Even though you don't like Brad Pitt?
Even though I don't like Brad Pitt, but I am in love with Morgan Freeman,
That's
so it balances out.
I've seen quite a few of his films. I've seen Alien 3, I've seen Fight Club. What else has this man done? He did 7, which I've seen.
Zodiac.
I have not seen Zodiac.
Neither have I.
But I have seen The Social Network. And one of my favorite David Fincher films is Gone Girl, which is excellent.
Yeah, I need to catch up on these. So Dylan will be able to speak more to his style. I don't know if this is kind of in line with his style of movies.
It's pretty much,
I think David Fincher, from what I've seen and heard, he likes darker films.
He does.
But anyway, so I guess we'll go and get into the story. I had a lot to say about this movie when I started writing down our notes here, and so I divided it into my negatives and my positives. I guess I'll go ahead and start with the negatives. You're going to think, after I list all these, that I didn't like this movie, but I promise I did. I just have a really good knack at picking out the problems with movies. Like, that's my specialty. So my first thing that kind of caught me off guard was this intro, the title intro.
It's weird.
Title sequence for this movie is weird. It's something that I would expect to see in a sci-fi movie, more than a movie that's about what this movie is about. And it's got, I forget the name of the song. It's a cover to that, isn't it a Led Zeppelin song?
It's a cover of the Immigrant song, yes.
Yeah, from Thor 3.
Well, it's not from Thor 3, it's a Led Zeppelin song.
I know it mostly because I watched Thor Ragnarok.
That's fair.
But
it's a different version of it.
Yeah, it's a cover of it.
Trent Reznor does the music for this movie, and he's the lead singer of Nine Inch Nails, and it's definitely more his style of this song, so...
Yeah.
That tells you anything.
And the whole sequence is like this CGI
black ooze looking thing.
Black ooze thing that takes the form of people, and I don't know.
It's Venom from Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, Venom. That's kind of what I was thinking. I mean, there's even points where tentacles come out of these CGI people, and I'm like, that's weird. But that aside, so as we're getting into this movie, we learn that Daniel Craig is this investigative reporter for this magazine called Millennium, I believe.
Yep.
And I guess he's had some charges brought against him because of a article that he published. I guess he wasn't able to verify his sources.
Yeah, it was about that business tycoon or whatever.
Yeah. And so anyway, he's down on his luck. So Christopher Plummer's character comes to him and is like, I want you to come to my island where my rich family lives, and I want you to try to help me see if you can find out what happened to my niece, who I think died 40 years ago. And the killer is sending Christopher Plummer's character
These flower paintings?
these flower paintings that his niece used to draw or paint or whatever. And anyway, and then on the other side, this film really has two distinct plot lines up until about halfway through. The other plot line, of course, is following Elizabeth Salander, played by Rooney Mara, and she is she's a ward of the state because she's been deemed psychologically unstable.
I think what I read is that according to Daniel Craig's character, he believes that she might have Asperger's syndrome, which is on the autism spectrum, which might be why she has a photographic memory.
Yeah.
And how she's so smart. So
yeah, she's socially awkward. Just putting it nice.
Yeah.
But anyway, so early on in the film, we establish she's a hacker that works for this. I think she works for the company that sued Daniel Craig's character,
whose name is Mikhail.
Mikhail. I kept saying Michael, but it's Mikhail because they're Swedish. Anyway, so she goes one day and she finds that her guardian has had a stroke, I think, or something. And anyway, so she has to go meet with this social worker who sexually abuses her throughout the movie. At one point, very graphically and very brutally, which I'll talk about a little bit more about in a second. And anyway, so we go through this movie. About halfway through, Daniel Craig decides he needs a partner to help him figure out this crime. So he teams up with Rooney Mara's character, and they work together on this crime. They kind of develop a romantic relationship. They solve it. Turns out that the daughter has been alive, or the niece, Christopher Plummer's niece, has been alive this whole time and living in hiding. And anyway, and then at the end of the movie, Elizabeth Salander and Mikhail, they split ways. But anyway, so back to the my negative. So first of all, like I said earlier, there's this David Fincher is very stylistic. He likes making dark films, as we've said.
He might have some problems.
He might have some problems. There is one scene in particular in this film. If you've watched it, you know what I'm going to say, where there is a very graphic depiction of a rape of Elizabeth Salander, and I just feel like he didn't have to show it from beginning to end. I feel like he could have cut away. Like there's one part as she's being chained to the bed where they show it and then they'll flash like to a scene, like a shot of the door and the camera's pulling back from the door. And they did that 2 or 3 times and then they kind of faded to black and I'm like, okay, well, we're not going to have to watch this whole scene. He's just going to imply that they're what happened the rest. But no. Then she wakes up in the bed and he proceeds to
sodomize her.
Sodomize her, putting it nicely. And it's just like I don't think I really needed to see that.
No, it's pretty extended and it's pretty.
Yeah, and I get what David Fincher was really trying to push this point. He was trying to disturb the audience and keep them intrigued in this film. I just don't know if it was necessary. That was kind of my first major problem I had with this movie. Another thing with this movie, I'm not going to say this is necessarily a major gripe. It's just more of an observation. It's not until about the hour 15, I think probably about the hour 13, hour 14 mark, where the two plot lines start to intersect.
Yeah, Daniel Craig, he kind of like, he figures out that someone has researched him and written a report about him, and he kind of goes to the company that he works for, I guess, or about the company that's hired him.
Christopher Plummer's character.
And he finds out that Elizabeth has written this report, and he tracks her down and kind of meets up with her.
So it is exactly the minute 17 mark when they first meet.
Hour 17.
Hour 17 mark when they first meet. And so this movie is almost exactly halfway over before the two main characters of this movie actually meet. Which, it's not the only movie I've ever watched that did this. And I'm not saying the movie's bad because both of their plot lines are being very well written up until this point. But I do think maybe they could have been a little more intertwined. I don't know. And that just gets more into my bigger gripe is that this movie is 2 hours and 38 minutes long.
It's a long one.
I feel like it probably could have been cut down to 2 hours, maybe 2:10, pretty easily without sacrificing much of anything. Some minor plot hole issues I have. Maybe this could have been explained because this is a pretty complicated plot this movie has. But there's one point where she kind of just walks into a police department and starts demanding police records.
And they just give them to her.
They give them to her, and I'm like, is that how it works in Sweden? I'm not sure. Okay.
Like, what do I gotta do to do this?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a cop son. I can't just go into the police department. I mean, I guess I could. Nobody would notice. But I mean, it wouldn't be quite right for me to just go in and start digging through their file cabinets.
I don't think they'd appreciate that very much.
Yeah, no. And then, like I said, the plot is complicated. I think at times it gets a little convoluted too. There's this scene where we're on the island that the Christopher Plummer's rich family owns and all lives on. And Daniel Craig makes a joke as Christopher Plummer is listing off all of his relatives and where they live. He's like, I'm having trouble keeping up with everyone. I'm like, me too. I'm having a lot of trouble keeping up with who is who, who's related to who, why certain people don't talk to each other, which is kind of a running joke. And it does kind of get complicated. I feel like maybe we could have cut down on a couple characters just to kind of make it kind of clear, like, you know, who's who and everything. I felt that this movie, like a lot of David Fincher films, is really dependent on the twist and how shocked you are at the twist. And there's really two major twists in this movie. One is the revelation that Stellan Skarsgard character
I predicted that one.
Yeah, is the abuser. I mean, I caught on to it before they revealed it. At first, I thought they were going to go with Christopher Plummer was the abuser. But I figured at some point I was like, okay, well, it's either him or Stellan Skarsgard. And then before they revealed it, I was about 99% sure it was going to be Stellan Skarsgard. And then the other big reveal, of course, is that the girl whose name I am totally blanking on, she is still alive, which I saw that coming from a mile away. I knew that was what they were going to do. But that doesn't make it the story's poorly written. I still think it's good, well written. It's just that I've seen other movies that kind of did the same thing. So I kind of knew where it was going. And then after the mystery is solved, after the last mystery is solved and they reunite Christopher Plummer with his niece, we had about another, 20 minutes of this movie that's kind of based on Rooney Mara's character, Elizabeth Salander. She goes, after Mikhail publishes another article about the company that sued him, she goes and she, steals all this tycoon's money. And this is a sequence that takes about 10 minutes of her dressing up like someone else, going and getting all this opening all these credit cards and transferring all his money. And then we have this scene at the end where she obviously still wants to have a relationship with Daniel Craig, but Daniel Craig is not really interested in keeping that relationship with her.
He's kind of with Robin Wright's character.
Yeah, he's with Robin Wright's character, who is his co-editor at this Millennium newspaper. And so Elizabeth Salander sees them walk into a cab together with Daniel Craig's arm around Robin Wright, and she gets mad and she throws the suit she bought him in the trash can and she storms off, and that's the end of the movie. I felt like a lot of that was really unnecessary. I felt like I really didn't care after the mystery was solved. It's like, okay, well, we've been doing at this for 2 hours and 20 minutes. It can be over now. So I mean, that's basically the overall negatives I have of this movie. I guess before I get into my positives, which I promise I do like this movie, I guess I'll go ahead and let you talk about your negatives.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much on the same page as you. I mean, I got some different points of views and opinions on certain aspects. That intro, like we've already talked about, with the very Nine Inch Nails stylized version of the Immigrant Song and the weird CGI black ooze stuff, it's an odd one, and I pointed that out from the very beginning. The brutality of the film, I've already seen this movie, so I knew it was pretty brutal, but watching it as a little bit older person, I don't know why my parents let me watch this when I was younger, because
how old were you when you watched this?
13.
Oh my god, were you scarred for life?
Well, I don't really remember. I mean, I remember watching it, and I remember it being pretty decent, but I remember being rough. but not as rough as that.
My mother would have died.
Yeah, it's rough. I mean, we didn't let Andrew watch it. Andrew's 17, so...
Yeah.
Andrew's okay, though. He's all good. But the brutality, it's rough. We could have afforded to cut away at certain moments in time, especially during that very extended rape scene that was very, very long.
Yeah, it seemed to go on forever just because
it
you were so uncomfortable.
I feel like it probably went on for about 5 minutes. It might not have gone on that long, but it sure felt that long.
Yeah, the second most brutal scene is when she goes back to his apartment.
Yeah, that one's rough too. She's like,
strips him naked, ties him down,
and she,
takes a metal object.
For lack of better words, she sodomizes him with
a metal object.
With a large metal object.
Yes.
And then proceeds to
tattoo
I am a rapist pig on his torso area.
Yeah.
It's pretty rough. Some of the violence I feel like could have been implied, but overall, I mean, it's not a huge gripe. It still helps the story progress. As Aaron already pointed out, the two storylines are very separate and different until they converge at that about hour 14, 15 mark, and then before our two leads meet at the hour 17 mark. Which when they meet, it picks up quite a bit. The pace quickens a little bit, and then we really start focusing on this mystery. And she helps him figure out things and solve things that have taken him days to even begin to point out. And then she just like looks at it, and boom, here it is. And she's already figured out all this information. And then she goes to the police station, and they just let her have these police records. And then she finds out all this information about all these girls that have been raped and then murdered that are all connected and tied to one specific killer, who we later find out is Christopher Plummer's brother, I would assume, or
the killer.
Well, the original killer was Martin's father, so
yeah,
Stellan Skarsgard's father.
His brother, yeah.
And then his son proceeds to take up his mantle after he passes away.
Yeah.
And we find that out later in the movie. But the plot can get kind of complicated and convoluted. There are a lot of characters in this movie that are in the family that, you see maybe once and you're like, well, that person was pointless. Why were they even in the movie? They just added another person that we had to worry about. Well, who are they? Why do they not talk to the family?
Yeah,
What's going on with them? So
the point was to try to, throw in as many possible suspects as they could.
I understand that, but back to that thing about, we both predicted that, Stellan Skarsgard's character, Martin, was going to be the killer at the end of the movie. And he was. That's one negative I do have with the movie, is that it was slightly predictable predicting that, and that we found out, or we could predict who did it, as well as the fact that she was still alive, the niece that we've been looking for.
I do have I have to add one more thing to what I said. Okay, if she's still alive, why did she find it necessary to still send painted pictures of plants to her uncle?
That's a fair point.
Like, we never had, like, there's two relationships in this movie that I think were underserved. The first one that it has a big effect on the film is the relationship between Elizabeth Salander and her guardian that has a stroke. We get the impression through a couple of visits she has to him that they had a good relationship. But I wish that we would have had, before he had his stroke, I wish that we would have had a scene establishing what kind of relationship they had. Like I said, we were led to believe it was a good one, but I just kind of wish we had a scene there. And then the second one is the relationship between Christopher Plummer's character and this niece that's been missing for 40 years. Again, we get the impression that they had a good relationship and that he was the only good person in the entire family. The only person in the entire family that was good to her. But I wish we'd have had a really solid scene that would have established that he was nice to her, and that's why she felt that she still needed to send these pictures, these paintings to him. Otherwise, it's kind of weird. I don't know.
It is what it is. I didn't even really think about that until just now. Thank you for that. But overall, I think that the movie's pretty good. I will somewhat disagree with you on that ending part. I mean, I thought that the end of it, after they solved the mystery, I think it's engaging. It's a neat extended part of the movie after they've solved the initial plot, I guess. How she goes and, helps out Mikkel and takes down this guy who kind of almost ruined his career. She ends up borrowing $50,000 from Daniel Craig's character so she can go on this trip and steal all this money from this man. and she comes back, and immediately, as soon as she gets back, gives him his money back, and then proceeds to buy him a gift. And then that ending scene where she sees them walking away, and then kind of throws her gift away, and then rides off on her motorcycle into the night or whatever. But I mean, I thought it was pretty good. I mean, I guess you can beg the question, you know, what's the point when we've already been going at this for 2 hours and we've solved the main theme of the movie or whatever. But I mean, I'm guessing that's how the book ended, and it's definitely a setup for a sequel, for a second movie, which is not really going to be the one that we're getting, since it's not the second book in the series, but it is definitely a sequel setup.
I mean, there is an original trilogy of films that came out in Sweden that do follow the first 3 novels, but that's not what we're getting with this sequel coming out, pseudo-sequel, I guess, coming out this weekend.
Yeah.
With
that said, let's get into our pros. I'll let you go ahead and go first.
Okay, so after I've said all these bad things, I find that the film is very engaging. The characters are very well written, especially Elizabeth Salander. The fact that we're led to believe that her father was abusive to her, and I think at age 12 she set him on fire. That's when she became a ward of the state. She was in and out of foster homes. She finally found a good guardian that she got along with, and then he has a stroke. So then she has to go to this sexually abusive caseworker and has to give him favors so that she can get her money, her allowance, and not be institutionalized. And then she meets Daniel Craig's character, and she hits it off with him, but then at the end of the movie, he leaves her too. And, I mean, it's a very, you really feel for her character. And as far as Daniel Craig's character goes, I think his is well written too. Obviously, he has his struggle as a journalist. He's sleeping with his co-editor, which ruined his marriage, we find out, and he does not have a good relationship with his ex-wife. Him and his daughter have an alright relationship, but then he starts sleeping with Elizabeth Salander, but then he gives up on her and starts going back with the editor. I mean, I guess the point is that he's a sleazebag. He's a sleazebag, yeah. You know, throughout the film we kind of learn to like him because he is really obsessed with finding out what happened to this girl, and he risks his life to find out, you know, who is a abuser in this family. Because he goes into Stellan Skarsgard's house after he's pretty sure that he is the perpetrator, and of course gets caught. And then leads to our final confrontation where Skarsgård, or his character is Martin. Martin takes Mikhail and
strings him up
in the basement. And it's actually that's the best scene in the movie, I think. It's very tense because, you know, it's like really you're not sure. Stellan Skarsgard gives a great performance, and you know his character is crazy, so you don't know exactly what he's going to do to Daniel Craig. And then, of course, Elizabeth Salander shows up and saves him, and then she gets in a car on a bike and chases him down the road, and then his car flips and it blows up. But I think all that works really well. The brutality of it, although I have complained about it, does work to an extent because the main theme of this movie is talking about rape and sexual assault, and the way David Fincher presents it as this horrible, awful thing, and how it has affected Elizabeth Salander's character. He does a really good job with that. I also kind of complained about how the two plots were separate until halfway through this movie, but I will say that I think once they do converge, they meld pretty seamlessly. I don't feel like it's forced too bad, because we did set up that she is a hacker that works for the same company that looks into people, so it makes sense that she did a background check on him. The way they write it into the film, it kind of, it goes together pretty seamlessly. And so overall, I'm going to say it is a well-written film, despite the gripes I've had. So I'll go ahead and say my overall for story is a solid good.
All right. Well, I am, again, pretty much on that same page as you. The story, as far as everything goes, is very engaging, and it's interesting, and it's fun to follow and keep up with, though it does get convoluted at times. It's a good story. and the characters in this story are so well written that you feel for them. Like Aaron said, Elizabeth and all that she's been through, and all that you see her go through throughout the film, really makes you like feel for this character and everything that she does and why she does what she does. And I think that works really well. Part of that, I guess, can be attributed to the acting that helps out a lot, but we'll get into that here in a little bit. That confrontation that you talked about with Martin at the very end of the movie, or toward the end of the movie, it is very tense. I thought it's very well written scene. We get Mikhail walking through this house while Martin's not home, kind of looking for definitive answers, making sure that this is the man who's doing this stuff. And he's walking out of the house, and he kind of slips and falls while Martin is coming home, and he gets invited in for a drink, and then he gets strung up and almost killed before Elizabeth saves him. But it's really good. The brutality, like Aaron said, it does work for the most part. Though it is very brutal, it definitely helps drive that story forward, and you understand why he's going for this. I just read, actually, last night while we were watching this movie that the Swedish title of this book actually translates to Men Who Hate Women, which I guess makes sense to why this entire story is about a man, or I guess technically two men, who have abused and sexually assaulted and then killed all these girls. So that title kind of makes sense. But overall, the story is really well written, and I can maybe see myself watching this movie a third time in my life, but it is pretty brutal at points. But I'll go ahead and give this story a good. So.
All right, so getting into acting, as I have alluded to, Rooney Mara is phenomenal in this movie. According to Dylan, all the piercings that she has in this film are real piercings.
They're real.
And, I mean, if she didn't have them before this movie, I would say that's dedication. She has nipple piercings. She has piercings like in her lips. She has
eyebrows, nose.
She has like 3 ear piercings. In each ear. She has like, through her nose, through her eyebrows. I mean, everywhere. And like the makeup, I don't know if there's a lot of makeup, but like they shave her eyebrows off, and she really played the part. And her acting, the way she portrays the character as very vulnerable, yet kind of, on the border psychologically, and, tough while vulnerable, is very great acting. Daniel Craig, he's Daniel Craig. He does good with the role he's given. Everybody in this movie is good. No one's bad, I feel like. So I'm going to give the acting a good, I would call it great. It's not a category that we rank it by, but if we did.
Rooney Mara in this movie is exceptional. She must have been, like you said, very dedicated, as I read, to get all those piercings that she got for this role. She must have been very comfortable with her body as well, because she does a lot of extended scenes where she is nude. Completely nude in the movie, so kudos to her for being, very comfortable with her body, especially playing a role where she has to perform scenes like that. That had to have been extremely uncomfortable. Yeah. So props to her. Her acting is phenomenal. Daniel Craig does a really great job in the movie. His character is again, like we've already discussed, very well written. Stellan Skarsgard gives a really great performance, especially that final confrontation scene at the end is excellent. Christopher Plummer is good. Robin Wright is good. Everyone in this movie is really seems to be putting in pretty much their best that they can give, and it really pays off. So I'll go ahead and give the acting a high good.
All right, yeah. For my hodgepodge section, I just said the direction is good, makeup and costuming is good. The effects, and by the effects, I mean really there's only one big CGI effect in this movie, and it's when Martin's car blows up, when it rolls over. It looked good.
It's a pretty solid explosion.
I mean, and then I'm sure they spent a lot of money on that intro title sequence. Yeah. I mean, it looks pretty, I guess. Soundtrack, I mean, it's serviceable. I mean, there's nothing super memorable about it, I guess, other than the cover of
The
Immigrant Song. And, I don't know, they might play a 9 Inch Nails song in there somewhere. I can't remember. So, overall, I'm going to say it's good.
Well, my hodgepodge section, I also have that the direction is really good. It's definitely a David Fincher movie, and you can tell that from the beginning. It's definitely a movie made by him. And he does a really good job with most of the things that he does, and I enjoy his films. The makeup and costuming, like Aaron said, is also good. I think that it was really cool how they, shaved her eyebrows and how she got all these piercings. And then at one point in the movie, I guess kind of like she's going to do in this new one, she kind of paints her eyes black or white or whatever. And that's kind of a neat makeup effect that they used. Kind of, I guess, like an Angel of Death kind of looking thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting. That explosion toward the end of the film, it's a pretty good explosion.
It goes boom.
It does go boom, and it makes a loud noise, and I mean, I'm here for it. The intro, though it's odd, is also, it's good. I mean, like we've said many times, it's an odd one, and it's got some weird points in it, but it's pretty good. I'm on a little bit different page with the score, though it's not got, super memorable moments. I thought the score done by Trent Reznor is... Alright, so the score in the movie, I think that though it doesn't have necessarily memorable moments, I think that Trent Reznor does a really good job with the music. He also did the music for a couple other David Fincher movies. He did the music for The Social Network. He did the music for Gone Girl. The music for Gone Girl is also really good. So as far as him being a composer for movies, I think that his scores are pretty good, though not necessarily the most memorable. They are good, except for that intro, which is highly odd and definitely a Nine Inch Nails style song. Something we forgot to mention. There's a semi-meta moment in the movie toward the beginning where Elizabeth goes and meets this guy, and he happens to be wearing a Nine Inch Nails shirt. I just thought it was kind of funny considering the fact that Trent Reznor did the music for the movie. But for my hodgepodge section, I'll give it a good.
All right, so overall, the overall grade of the film, I'm gonna say, like we've talked about, it's well written, well acted, well directed. So I had no choice but to give it a really good. I think it's
all right. I think that's the first one you've given a higher grade.
A really good. Like I've said, I do have some problems with it, but it's a very powerful movie. It traverses some really dark themes, but I think it does them well. It does them justice. So yeah, all in all, really good.
I'm on the same page as you as far as my overall grade goes. This movie is very well written. The characters are fleshed out really well, and they all have really interesting backstories. Though we could have got some more expositional scenes about some of their lives, would have been nice. It works really well. It's very well written, very well directed by David Fincher, and the acting by everyone is really good, especially on Rooney Mara's part. So I'm right there with you. I'm gonna give it a high good.
Yeah, at some point we're gonna have to go back and review the Alien films. One, because the first two are great. But another reason, I want to go back, I want to watch Alien 3 again. I want to see if we can pick out where David Lynch...
This isn't a Twin Peaks review.
David Fincher influence is really noticeable. And you can tell that he's really... the scenes that he's really focused on and...
Well, it's also possible...
passionate about. And the scenes where... you can tell where the studio came in and said, okay, well, we have to have X, Y, Z, and where Sigourney Weaver, because I have read that Sigourney Weaver had a lot of power in that movie, where Sigourney Weaver came in and said, okay, I want to do this and this and this.
With that being said, though it's been a while since I've seen it, and David Fincher does have a specific style that he directs in. Considering the fact that it is his major directorial debut, he probably hadn't developed his own style yet, so it's going to be really hard to pick out.
Yeah, I mean, now that I've seen a couple other David Fincher movies, you can tell that where his style was starting to come through, or where he was, really starting to develop that style. Obviously, like I said, there are a lot of problems with that movie. We'll probably talk about it one day. But anyway, on to our upcoming.
We have a correction to make.
Yeah, I think I've alluded to in the last couple of episodes, I have said that after Overlord and Girl in the Spider's Web that we have Creed 2 coming up. I was wrong. Next week, the weekend after this one coming up, obviously we have Overlord and Girl in the Spider's Web. That's why we've...
And technically the Grinch comes out this upcoming weekend.
And the Grinch comes out. But I have the Grinch scheduled for the week after that, which is Fantastic Beasts
and the Crimes of
Grindelwald or something. And we're going to review that one and hopefully the Grinch as well.
I think that'll finally be one that we might have quite a bit of.
Yeah, because I'll just go ahead and say it now. I was not a big fan of the first Fantastic Beasts.
I enjoyed the first one.
We might try to do a bonus episode. We're not going to go back and review all Harry Potter.
No.
But we might try to do a bonus episode where we go back and review Fantastic Beasts and where to find them.
In our discussion episode, though, we might rank the Harry Potter films if that's cool with you.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. I have watched all of them at some point. Some of them I've only watched once. But, and then we will, the week after that comes out Creed 2, which I'm currently working on getting through the Rocky films so that I can say I've watched all of them. I did watch Rocky 2 today, and I think I had actually seen most of that movie. But I don't think I've seen hardly any of the remaining Rocky films, except for Creed. I have sat down and watched. I did go to the theater and see the first Creed film. But anyway, and then also Widows comes out, which their first reviews for Widows are out, and they really like it. They say it's a really good film. So
we'll see.
We shall find out.
It's got Viola Davis in it.
It's got Liam
Neeson in it.
I got a feeling Liam Neeson's probably in a grand total of 10 minutes of the movie. Maybe. But hey, Liam Neeson's got a bigger project. Bigger.
Cold Pursuit
coming out. Yeah, we're ready for that. So anyway, I think that's about all we have for you today, unless Dylan has anything to add.
Just as always, our social media. So we're at DNA Film Wars, all lowercase, no space, on all social media.
Yep, and if you have any specific questions and or comments, you can contact us at dnafilmwars@gmail.com. Please feel free to leave us a review. We are up on all major podcatchers, I believe.
iTunes, Google Play, pretty much anything you can think of, you'll probably find us there.
Yep.
You can also find us on YouTube. So
that is true. And
that about wraps
I
up.
think that about wraps it up. So as always, I'm Aaron.
I'm Dylan. We'll see you next time.
Someone in the family murdered Harriet, and for the past 40 years has been trying to drive me insane. Those are from her, and the rest from her killer.
You failed to adapt to 4 foster homes. Were arrested twice for intoxication, twice for assault. How many partners have you had in the last month? And how many of those were men?